The Cabal of Tsakata, Episode 7. September 16th, 513. It was a long 3-day journey, but we finally made it to the place known as JdSarte. During our trek, Samira and I had greater conversation about the differences between her home and mine. She has never left Naquer and would actually like to see Ocean Dare. I promised to take her and show her all of it. Anyway, we arrived in JdSarte about mid-afternoon. Even as we approached the small oasis, I noticed the remnants of an established settlement, long abandoned. Mud and brick buildings stood in various places to the right of the large pool of cool water. That was where a modest village once thrived. I could almost see the echoes of the past. Villagers keeping watch over the possible hidden temple nearby, and maintaining the pleasant charade. Rather than go straight for the mural, Dr. Reaver had us secure the camp and gather water from the oasis. By the time we were finished, the sun was starting to set. We were all feeling pretty tired, so Dr. Reaver decided that we would start to do the excavation and exploration in the morning. Dr. Reaver, Samira, Hamal, Obasi, Carol, and I walked over to the mural and the secret entrance. The mural was quite large, 8 feet high and 4 feet across. Obasi showed us where the secret entrance was, and I could tell if it wasn't nearing nightfall, Dr. Reaver would have gone inside. Hamal said he would position 3 guards around the entrance. I stayed behind to sketch the mural, or at least start on the sketch. Dr. Reaver allowed me to do this, and so everyone else left. I waited until the 3 guards came to the secret entrance before I started on my sketch. The 3 guards were nice enough to help me build a little fire for me to sit around, and the firelight helped me see the mural when the daylight faded. The mural was interesting as it showed a different side of Tsakata, different from the goddess of fertility and sexuality, and also different than the depiction that the Order of Dagon portrayed. This version of Tsakata wore a pair of leather pants, a pair of battle boots, and a leather cuirass. She wielded 4 swords, all curved blades, and she also had a serious look on her face. I had not realized how long I had been sitting there until Samira came by the campfire. She sat beside me and we talked about the mural. Samira marveled at the contrast of depiction. In Tagunite legends and obscure myths, Tsakata was thought of as a troublemaker and defiler of morality. This version was definitely a battle-ready goddess. We laughed and discussed what potential mysteries we might find. Samira encouraged me to head on to bed, as Dr. Reaver would no doubt wish to explore the temple after breakfast. I agreed, put my fire out, and then went to bed. However, I will say, Samira is watching me write this entry. She is so lovely. September 17th, 513. I awoke today and I could already feel the power in the air. There was a sticky sort of anticipation that already lapped at me. Everyone at breakfast was silent as they ate, and we all kept glancing at Dr. Reaver, who appeared excited and agitated. Once we were finished, Dr. Reaver stood up and declared quite excitedly that we were ready to go inside. She led the procession of people with Obasi and Carol behind her, and Samira and I behind them. Hamal walked beside Dr. Reaver. We opened the concealed door carefully as to not break it. Hamal led the way with a torch in hand, and I took up the rear. We descended down some of the stairs about 100 feet. The passage was wide enough for me to extend my hands outward and not touch the walls, and the ceiling was perhaps 7.5 feet tall. Each of the stairs were expertly carved into the stone, and so it was fairly easy to go down them without danger of slipping or falling down. The passage was hewn from the earth, and there weren't any abnormal grooves or imperfections along the way. After we descended down 100 feet, we stepped into a wide foyer, as it were. The floor had been covered in brightly colored tiles and showed the goddess sitting cross-legged, with her 4 arms resting at her side. Her eyes were closed, and it appeared as if she were meditating. Around her, other people were dressed in black headscarves, veils, and robes, and they kneeled before her. From the looks of the depictions, these black-clad warriors wore raider or marauder-like outfits. As soon as I saw the imagery, I asked if it were possible that the marauders who attacked before could be protectors of the ancient sites of the Cabal. However, Hamal reminded me that those marauders were actually zealots of a very conservative Tagunite sect who worshipped Shali Shababa as a saint and sought to exterminate anyone trying to glorify Tsakata. Those were Tagunite extremists. I wonder who the black-clad warriors depicted on the floor are. At the other end of the temple were 2 torch stands on either side of a pair of large stone doors. On each of the doors, there was the image of a warrior with a sword drawn. Script was etched across the top of the doorframe, and Obasi read it aloud. The Order of the 4 Swords guards this holy site. Samira whispered to me that there were ancient references to Tsakata's band of assassins, a group called the Order of the 4 Swords. I didn't even know there was an assassin's band connected to the goddess. Who was she really? Why did she have a band of warrior assassins to guard her temples? Was this because of Shali Shababa? Or did they exist much longer? The walls of the foyer were left unadorned, and they were bare earth, as to mark the boundary between ancient South Shiadam and the domain of Tsakata. We pushed the doors open and went inside. There was a long hallway that extended deeper into the temple. On the walls, violent imagery was captured for all time. The black-clad warriors engaged in combat with the Knights of Tagun. Corpses from both sides lay at the feet of the combatants, and each dead model had their own unique manner of being slain. The artist was quite graphic in their details. Upon closer inspection, I noticed a thick layer of resin on the floor to protect and preserve the art. We came to a pair of large rooms, and they contained shelves of hundreds of scrolls. Obasi nearly squealed in delight. We came to another set of doors, and they appeared to be for food or storage. At the end of the halls, we came to a massive chamber with 100-foot-tall ceilings. From somewhere up above, there were carefully concealed skylights, as daylight beams poured into the chamber from a dozen little openings. A large 8-foot statue existed at the far end of the chamber, and it was quite intense. The image was of Tsakata standing over a prone form. It took a moment for me to recognize it was the god Tagun, and he was eagerly using his mouth on Tsakata's cock. Tagun's hands clasped Tsakata's thighs, while the goddess had a pair of hands holding Tagun's head in place, while the other 2 were crossed over her chest. While Tsakata had an exposed cock, she was clothed beyond that, wearing her battle boots, her leather cuirass, and even bracers. A dominating facial expression was on Tsakata's face, and she watched Tagun to make sure his work quality didn't slip. Tagun was dressed in his iconic attire, as shown in every other artist rendering. As soon as Hamal saw the statue, he cursed under his breath and refused to look at it further. Tagun's facial expression was joyous, to say the least. I blushed a little, even more so when Samira nudged me playfully. The large chamber was circular in nature, and had 2 hallways extending off of it diagonally behind the graphic statue. Along the right walls were the images of an obvious master-at-arms, training over warriors in black. People were depicted sparring with wooden training weapons and doing drills. Along the left walls were the images of people dressed like clerics, talking with other people in robes. Judging from the themes of the left walls, I speculate that this was referred to the training of clerics. Carol visually danced as she beheld them. The right corridor led to a wing that served as a barracks and armory. Ancient weapons still laid within their racks, and Amal's interest peaked. There were artistic renderings of the warriors in black in various places, as well as another large room with many scrolls in it. The left wing was also a sort of dormitory with imagery of clerics' training, as well as a large study. After the initial tour, we returned to camp and openly discussed how we would go about excavating the temple. There were a lot of artifacts found, ranging from ancient weapons and armor, religious trinkets, staves, and cleric robes. There was also the massive amount of scrolls and text. The beautiful but controversial statue was the crown jewel of the temple, no doubt. And then there was the art along the walls. I anticipate us being here for quite some time. September 18th, 5:13. We began the first day of excavating. Samira has been assigned to help Obasi translate all of the scrolls. Carol went to focus her attention on the cleric wing for now, and Dr. Reaver plans to help by starting on the military wing. I'm going to start at the beginning of the temple and work my way back. September 28th, 5:13. I finally finished sketching the art from the front of the temple, the battle scenes in the hall, and the circular walls surrounding the statue. Before going into the wings, I plan to tackle the statue. The last 10 days have been so busy, and yet just the same routine. Eat a lunch, draw, eat some dinner, either cuddle or make silent love with Samira, sleep, get up for the next day. Samira and I have discussed what we have found. Her work with Obasi is slow going, as there is so much to read and discuss. Samira told me that the temple was more so an administrative one, rather than catering to the needs of its followers. Instead, this was a training temple for two important groups within the order, the clerics of Tsakata and the Order of the Four Swords. Samira wasn't sure, based on the records, who the order was, or whether or not they were assassins. Many of the records in the storage rooms Obasi and Samira discussed were related to record-keeping of who attended the ritual orgies from all over Shashiadam. She mentioned that there were letters of correspondence that were kept that acknowledged the growing danger of Shali Shababa and his crusade. I asked her if there were any mention of great battles, and she said no. There weren't any actual recorded historical battles either, not in the scales depicted on the halls of the temple. Samira and I began to discuss the possibility of the imagery in the hallways related to a prophecy or dire warning of what may occur if the Knights of Dagon actually found the last temple. We discussed the possibility of numerous followers and speculated how many people pledged themselves to Tsakata. I asked her what happened to the mysterious Cabal of Tsakata. Was there ever a public defeat of the order? Surprisingly, she told me no. Sometime after the 5th king of ancient Shashiadam, the Cabal of Tsakata just disappeared, and that was a little over 400 years ago. It seems the ancient Cabal was preparing for something, but then they disappeared. I wonder what happened to them. September 29th, 5:13. I spent all day drawing the statue. Just like the artist who did the statue in the hidden chamber at Ornak, this one was so detailed, as if I were watching two deities engaging in an intimate act. The god Tagun wasn't being forced, but it appeared that he was happily sucking upon Tsakata. Interestingly, Tsakata appeared to be dominating the conservative god with a brooding stare. But now that I really gazed close at the statue, I picked up on subtle details carved into it. Drool dribbled off of Tagun's chin, and if Tsakata's penis length was universally accepted by the entire Cabal order, then Tagun had 80% of its size in his mouth. Tsakata's hands were placed at the back of Tagun's skull, preventing him from pulling back. The goddess wasn't smiling. but almost sneering at the other god. Tagoon's hands clutched at Tsakata's hips desperately for fear of being cast away. I discussed the statue with Samira tonight after supper. We came to a strong conclusion. Early in our friendship, we suggested the idea that Tagoon was once the lover, or perhaps wanted to be the lover of Tsakata. In the wake of rejection, Tagoon may have condemned Tsakata, which resulted in an overall hunt for Tsakata's temples. The statue could also symbolize how many of Tagoon's clerics sought out the pleasure of the order, and how many of them wanted to escape the sexual repression of the Order of Tagoon. Judging from the dominant expression on Tsakata's face, she is not enjoying herself, nor is she dressed for such intimate activities. Tsakata is dressed for battle and conflict. Her arms are crossed over her chest, suggesting she is not open for communication, and she is firmly keeping Tagoon's mouth and throat full of her cock. I suggested that she may be doing that to remind Tagoon of his place, or remind the god that he wants to be there on his knees. Maybe it's to reinforce the idea that Tagoon should stop persecuting Tsakata and her people. Samira and I could be right. She noted the drool coming from Tagoon's mouth and on his chin, representing his greed and lust for her. Isn't it funny how our obsessions sometimes cloud our judgments? Tagoon's desperation was even more evident based on how he clutched at Tsakata's hips. I asked whether or not something like this would be publicly displayed in the museum. Samira swiftly answered no. Having the statue from Ornak was one thing, but this would cause massive zealous anger in the Tagoonite order. In the eyes of the Tagoonites, it was blasphemy, and if we did display it, the order would no doubt burn the museum to the ground. Still, the statue had to be protected. Samira and I plan to cuddle tonight. I love feeling her close to me, breathing in and out, and feeling her grip my sides. I will admit, I am in love with Samira. Octobrine 4th, 513. I've been helping Obasi, Samira, and Carol organize all of the scrolls, as well as take notes on what they said. Dr. Reaver has nearly finished going through all of the scrolls in the right wing, those related to the Order of the Four Swords. A lot of the scrolls that Obasi and Samira are going through are related to the administration of all other temples in the country. On the shelves, there are sections dedicated to each of the temples. From those records, we were able to name the locations of the other destroyed temples, and also identify when they were destroyed. That information alone is quite precious. Carol was able to gain a lot of information related to the Cabal of Tsakata's clerics, ancient rituals, and even spells. While I do not believe in them, others do, including Samira. I anticipate Samira switching over to help Carol, as Obasi confirmed all of his stacks are administrative. Dr. Reaver gave us some great knowledge about the Order of Four Swords. They get their name from the fact that Tsakata wields 4 swords. According to the lore, Dr. Reaver told us they existed to launch secret and covert attacks against Tsakata's enemies, defend her temples, and serve the great goddess. A lot of the scrolls were related to the administration and training of new warriors, how to train them, and also a record of missions given to them by an individual who held the title of Tsakata's Falchion. Apparently, there are 4 special positions in the Order of the Four Swords, those who are the highest-ranking members, and Tsakata's Falchion was the overseer of this temple. The other 3 positions were Tsakata's Scimitar, Tsakata's Dagger, and Tsakata's Rapier. While the Falchion protected the training of new recruits, the Scimitar exacted revenge and vengeance on behalf of the Order. The Dagger of Tsakata assassinated dangerous individuals who caused trouble for the Order, and the Rapier of Tsakata was a diplomat who negotiated on behalf of the Cabal. The difference between the Scimitar and the Dagger was that the scimitar was more like the head of the order's raiders and marauders. The dagger, on the other hand, led the Assassin's Corps. Dr. Reaver revealed something else. The last temple on the map was the center of the Cabal itself, and was called the Citadel of Four Swords. It was referenced to be the oldest structure in all of ancient Saushiadam. According to Dr. Reaver, Tsakata predated the ancient kingdom, and was a part of the mysterious kingdom that existed before Saushiadam. However, the kings of Saushiadam destroyed all records or buildings that came before their reign. Once we finish excavating the temple, if Dr. Reaver is successful in negotiating and keeps me on, I may go find the last known temple of Tsakata at a place called Yetrif. October 9th, 513. It was my turn to go to Rocklola for supplies, and Samira went with me. Isco and the other 2 guards came with me as well. We arrived in Rocklola today, and will probably leave in 2 days. Isco and the other 2 guards are going to the local taverns to blow off steam, which is fine by Samira and I. We went to our room at the inn, and have been making love all afternoon. Tomorrow we will begin the process of restocking, and then we'll make our way back to Lorbesh, or rather, Isaptra. October 10th, 513. We placed our order in with the merchants, and we should be able to leave in 3 days. It will take that long because of how much we need. I told Samira I loved her. To my great relief, she also expressed love for me. I'm so glad I came to Naquer. October 13th, 513. We left Rocklola today, and we should be back with the others in a couple of days. Being alone with Samira has been a joyous luxury. I wonder if it could be something I can savor for years to come. I hope so. October 15th, 513. We got back to Lorbesh today, and we met with Dr. Reaver. She plans to send a couple of writers to the museum in Bubesh to request a team to collect all of the artifacts and scrolls. There is so much, and I'm certain it will take a long while to upload everything. Until they come, I will continue to study the temple. November 27th, 513. A massive caravan of wagons, workers, and soldiers came in today to help us secure all of the artifacts found. Soon, we will be returning to Bubesh.